Hey everybody, today I just wanted to show you something I've been working on. I am working on an automatic watering irrigation system for my plants that we're growing out on the balcony of my apartment. And I'm using my 12 volt power supply. This was from an old laptop or something that didn't work anymore. Laptop was no good, but the power supply was still good. So this is like a 3 amp 12 volt DC power supply, and so that's what I'm using for my power supply. Next I bought a digital timer switch off of Amazon that I'm using to make this connection. So 1 minute every other day 12 volts DC gets connected across here. So just for that 1 minute it makes this connection. Now when it makes that connection, that electricity goes through this coil that's actually inside of a double pole, double throw relay switch. So this voltage goes through this coil and triggers this switch, which I've drawn this a little bit differently than most schematics, but this is the pole and these are the two throws of the switch. So this dotted line represents where the switch is connected when this is active, okay? Try to keep that in mind. So I've got this single pole double throw switch, and then over here I've got a second switch, which is, there's the pole and there's the two throws. So this is a double pole, double throw relay switch. And I know everything's kind of separate in the schematic, but remember, schematics are representations of how everything's connected electrically, not necessarily where everything is physically when you put something together. So anyway, so when the voltage comes across here, when the timer goes off, it will trigger the switch, which allows it to bridge across here. It goes across here, but not down here, because this gets disconnected. When this is active, this is not. So it goes through a capacitor, and that charges up the capacitor, goes through a motor, which opens my valve, and then the other side of the motor needs to go to ground, so it comes out of the motor, and then it goes across this switch that we triggered with the relay, through the second pole and that throw of that switch to ground, and it doesn't go here. And then it also comes out on this wire and comes to here, but this is disconnected when this is triggered, so this doesn't really go anywhere. Okay, so then after the 1 minute, this connection goes away and the 12 volts stops making it across here. So it doesn't come through. Oh, I got a little bit of water on there. It stops triggering this relay and I lose this connection, but it switches over here. So this is connected now. And I lose this connection, but this is connected now. So keep your eyes on these solid lines for these two switches, okay? So how is this connected now? Well, this is no longer connected, so there's no voltage here, so the relay isn't triggered. This is a gap now, so that's no longer able to get across there. So the positive end of the capacitor is now connected to this end of the motor, whereas positive voltage was flowing in on this side earlier. It's now coming off the capacitor and going to this side of the motor. And then this connection changed, so now the switch went from here to here, so it disconnected from ground here, and that means, so that makes sure that all this voltage we stored up on our capacitor didn't just dump to ground, so we lost that connection there. So now my motor is now running in reverse, where positive voltage comes in through this side and then goes to the negative side of the capacitor, just like the capacitor was a battery, because it's effectively what it is. It's just a very short-term battery. Now I tried some experiments. I got this motor. This is a 3/4 inch ball valve motorized motor, or motorized valve rather. Motorized ball valve, that's probably the right way to say that. And it runs off 12 volts. And I figured out how much capacitance I needed by doing some experiments. I just basically got out some of the larger capacitors that I had lying around and charged them up to 12 volts, and Then when 1 wasn't enough, I tried 2, and when 2 wasn't enough, I tried 3, and when 3 wasn't enough, I tried 4, and 4 seemed to do it. And I just added up. Now when you put capacitors in parallel, like these, see all the negative legs are on one rail, and all the positive legs are on the other rail. So when you put all those in parallel like that, the capacitance adds up. So if you can see, let's see how many farads these are. So these are 2200 microfarads, and this is capable of handling up to 50 volts. Here's the timer. You can set, the time of day. It's a 24-hour, it's military time on the timer, and you can program it to turn on and program it to turn off at specific times throughout the day. You could set it to every other day, you could set it to every day, you could set it to once a week, that kind of stuff. It's really not a bad, relatively inexpensive timer. Here's what the guts look like. So there's my timer. Here's the power, the power that the timer's running off of, and that is just jump right over to this switch. You'll see the schematic symbol for switch right there. So that switch there is that switch there. So yeah, here's my extra large capacitor. This is that's 22,000 microfarads. 22,000 microfarad capacitor. Here's a relay, and I actually got this nice little socket for my relay, so I can just pull it out and unplug it. So normally this piece of metal is connected to this piece of metal unless you run voltage through this coil, through both ends of this, and when voltage goes through both ends of that, 12 volts, it will switch from being connected from this pin to this pin to this pin to this pin. So it'll go from here and here to here and here. And then the other side is the exact same situation, but it's just a second switch. Remember, this is a double pole, double throw switch, relay switch. So once I was done designing it, I just followed my schematic and made sure that all of these connections happen on the actual design. And I had some extra wires that I didn't use, but I might use those for something else later. But this is how it turned out, and it works pretty well. I'm going to go ahead and close that up, and then we'll connect it to the actual irrigation system, and I'll show you what it looks like in operation. Okay, so here's the system. I got 10 gallons of water on top and water jugs that are feeding into a T-junction here with that motorized ball valve in the middle. That goes down to these distribution valves. Those go down, run along the railing here and get fed into each of the plants. Alright, and then there's our timer. It's attached to our motor. So when that goes off, you can program it. I've got it programmed actually every day for 2 minutes. So just to show you what would happen when it goes off, I'm going to hit the manual button. Hit it a little harder. Come on, do the thing. Here we go. And it takes it just a minute, and there it goes. water coming out there as well.